The executioner doesn't hold an axe. He holds a pair of red-hot iron pincers. In the field outside Munich, the crowd of 10,000 falls into silence so complete you can hear the crackling of the brazier where those pincers were heated. They know this will not be a swift death. On the scaffold, a woman named Anna Pappenheimer kneels, her body already shattered from weeks of torture in the dungeons below the city. But her final agony isn't the fire that will consume her. It's being forced to see her two youngest sons, Gumprey and 10-year-old Michel, chained to posts just meters away, forced to watch what comes next. The executioner reaches for her chest. The pincers close around flesh. The sound that rips through the silence isn't a scream, but something worse. The sound of a soul realizing that mercy has completely abandoned this world. This was never about justice. This was never about protecting Bavaria from witches or devils or evil. This was orchestrated cruelty as political theater, a warning written in scorched flesh and shattered families to terrorize a nation into submission. Before we descend into one of history's most horrific judicial murders, hit that subscribe button for medieval spirits and smash the like. Because what you're about to discover is how one ordinary family living on society's margins was transformed by a condemned thief's desperate lie into Bavaria's most notorious witch trial. How Duke Maximilian I weaponized their poverty and outsider status for Catholic counter-Reformation propaganda. How weeks of torture forced them to confess to impossible crimes and name 400 innocent people, spreading persecution like plague through Bavaria. How their execution on July 29, 1600 was designed as maximum public spectacle, with cruelty so extreme they shocked even an era accustomed to brutal deaths. And how 10-year-old Michel was forced to watch his entire family destroyed, then murdered 3 months later after psychological torture designed to make him deny the parents he loved. This isn't just medieval history. This is a blueprint for how power manufactures enemies and destroys the powerless. Now let's go back to where this horror truly began, with a family whose only crime was being born into the wrong profession. The story of the Pappenheimer family begins with death. In the small Bavarian town where Anna grew up in the late 1500s, her father was the man everyone needed, but nobody wanted to see. He was the gravedigger, the one who handled corpses, who touched death with his bare hands. In a world where superstition ran deeper than faith, this made him and his entire family permanently unclean. Picture young Anna, maybe 6 or 7 years old, walking through the market square. Other children scatter like she carries plague. Mothers pull their little ones close, whispering prayers of protection. The baker refuses to hand her bread directly, instead dropping it on the counter and stepping back. This is what it means to be born into shadow, to be marked from birth as something less than human. Social isolation creates its own gravity. The outcasts find each other. That's exactly what happened when Anna met Paulus. He was another pariah, another soul marked by his father's profession, cleaning sewers, handling waste, doing the jobs that kept society functioning, but that society despised them for doing. Their marriage wasn't just love, though by all accounts, genuine affection existed between them. It was survival. Two people who understood what it meant to be permanently outside, permanently other. When they stood before the priest making their vows, they were building a fortress of two against a world that had already rejected them. The early years brought children, first Simon, then Gumprey, and finally little Michel. With each birth, Anna and Paulus must have felt that mix of joy and dread that comes with bringing new life into a hostile world. These weren't just their children. These were more souls born into shadow, more lives that would carry the stain of their parents' untouchable status. Being poor in Bavaria at the turn of the 17th century was dangerous enough. The 30 Years' War was brewing. Religious tensions crackled through every town and village. Fear hung in the air like smoke. But being poor and ritually unclean, being the family everyone already associated with death and filth, that combination would prove catastrophic. The Pappenheimers tried to build a life. Paulus took whatever work he could find, fixing things, hauling loads, anything that didn't require social acceptance. Anna raised the children, teaching them to keep their heads down, to be invisible, to survive. They moved frequently, always on the margins, always one step ahead of complete destitution. But isolation breeds suspicion when you're already seen as tainted. Every misfortune in a community starts to bend toward you. A cow dies unexpectedly, people remember the gravedigger's daughter walked past that field. A well runs dry, someone recalls seeing Paulus near it. These aren't accusations yet, just whispers, glances, the slow accumulation of unease that will eventually crystallize into something monstrous. But the Pappenheimer situation is about to get exponentially worse. By 1590, Bavaria had made poverty itself illegal. The wandering poor, the beggars, the families without permanent residence weren't just unwanted anymore. They were criminals. And the Pappenheimers, forever moving from town to town in search of work and survival, fell squarely into this category. Every time Paulus left their temporary shelter to find day labor, every time Anna ventured out with the children to beg for food, they were committing a crime punishable by imprisonment or worse. The sound of horses' hooves on cobblestones sent hearts racing. Was it just a merchant passing by, or was it the town guard? One night, with the children crying from hunger, Paulus made a decision that would haunt the family forever. He heard about a job, steady work that paid actual wages. The catch? It was the worst job imaginable: cleaning privies. The waste handlers of Bavaria weren't just poor, they were the absolute bottom of society's ladder. They worked at night, moving through darkness to empty the cesspits and privies of townspeople. They literally handled human filth, and that filth clung to them in the minds of everyone they met. But it was work. It was survival. And this is where the family got their name. Pappenheimer. Not their real name, but a label. A brand that marked them as the lowest of the low. In some accounts, it came from the paper used in privies. In others, it was a corruption of a place name. But the origin doesn't matter as much as what it meant. You are filth. You handle filth. You are what you handle. Picture Anna's face when Paulus came home with the news. Relief at having steady income, warring with horror at what it meant. Their children would now carry this stigma too. Little Michel, barely old enough to understand, would grow up as the son of the Pappenheimer, the shit handler, the night crawler, the thing that decent people didn't acknowledge in daylight. The work itself was backbreaking and degrading. Paulus would leave as darkness fell, wrapping himself in rough cloth, carrying the tools of his trade. He'd move from house to house, estate to estate, descending into pits where human waste accumulated. The sound of his shovel scraping against stone, the splash of filth being loaded into carts, these became the soundtrack of the family's nights. But here's what the historical records don't capture: the small moments of humanity in the midst of this degradation. Anna keeping the children quiet so Paulus could sleep during the day. The family sharing meager meals, finding joy in small things, a successful day of begging, a kind word from a stranger, the simple fact of being together. The children grew up marked by their father's profession. Other children threw stones, called them names that stung worse than any physical blow. Pappenheimer! Pappenheimer! The chant followed them everywhere. Simon, the eldest, learned to fight back. Gumpre became quiet, withdrawn. Little Michel clung to his mother's skirts, not understanding why the world seemed so cruel. The family had names now, addresses, a place in the community. But that place was at the very bottom, in the darkness, handling the waste of their betters. They were the official bogeymen of the town, working in the dark. They had no idea that a real monster was about to speak their name and turn their nightmare existence into something infinitely worse. 1600. In a Munich prison, a condemned thief faces his interrogators. He's been caught red-handed, and execution looms. But the authorities offer him a deal. Give them information about other crimes, other criminals, and perhaps mercy might be found. The thief begins to talk. At first, his confessions are mundane accomplices in robberies, other thieves, but his interrogators want more. In an era where every misfortune is blamed on dark forces, they press him about witchcraft, about devil worship, about the murders of children that plague parental nightmares. That's when the thief speaks the name that will doom an entire family, Pappenheimer. The accusation he crafts is a masterpiece of grotesque invention. The Pappenheimers, he claims, aren't just waste handlers. They're serial killers who stalk pregnant women, murder them for their unborn children, and here's where the lie becomes so monstrous it takes on a life of its own. They use these unbaptized infants to create magical candles. Candles that, when lit, render anyone who carries them invisible. Candles made from the rendered fat of innocent babies. Think about the diabolical genius of this lie. It combines every parent's worst nightmare with the superstitions of the age. It takes a family already associated with filth and darkness and transforms them into something out of nightmare. The waste handlers who work in the night become monsters who hunt in the night. The interrogators lean forward. This is exactly what they want to hear. Not because they necessarily believe it at first, but because it's so sensational, so horrifying, that it will justify anything they do next. The thief, sensing their interest, elaborates. The Pappenheimers have been doing this for years, dozens of victims, maybe hundreds. They have a whole network of accomplices. They meet with the devil himself. Bavaria in 1600 is a powder keg of religious tension and social anxiety. The Catholic Counter-Reformation is in full swing. Tales of witches and devil worshippers provide a common enemy, something everyone can unite against. And who better to fill that role than a family of outcasts everyone already despises? The accusation spreads through authorities like wildfire. Here's the answer to every unexplained death, every missing person, every stillborn child: the Pappenheimers. Of course, those who handle the city's filth and darkness, who live on the margins, who've always been somewhat less than human in the public eye. It makes perfect, horrible sense. But here's the truly terrifying part. The accusation is so extreme, so detailed, so horrifying, that it creates its own credibility. Surely no one would make up something so grotesque. Surely there must be some truth to it. The very monstrousness of the lie becomes its own proof. Word begins to spread beyond prison walls. Whispers in the market, hushed conversations in taverns. The story grows with each telling. The Pappenheimers aren't just killing pregnant women, now they're conducting satanic rituals. They aren't just making candles, they're selling them to an entire network of criminals and witches. And all the while, the Pappenheimer family continues their miserable existence, completely unaware that their names are being spoken in halls of power, that a condemned thief's desperate lie has just lit a fuse that will explode their world. The accusation reaches the ears of the most powerful man in Bavaria, and he sees in this grotesque fiction exactly what he needs: the perfect victims for the perfect political spectacle. Duke Maximilian I of Bavaria is a man with ambitions stretching far beyond his borders. He wants to be the champion of the Catholic Counter-Reformation, the defender of the faith, the ruler who restores order to a chaotic world. But he has a problem. His subjects are restless, anxious, full of fears about witches and devils and social breakdown. He needs something dramatic, something that will show his power and piety in one decisive stroke. When the report about the Pappenheimers reaches his desk, Maximilian must see it as a gift from God himself. Here's the perfect opportunity: a family of outcasts accused of the most heinous crimes imaginable. No powerful relatives to object. No social standing to complicate matters, just a group of human refuse who can be transformed into a lesson for all Bavaria. The arrest happens at dawn. Paulus stumbles from the tavern where the family had taken shelter, still groggy from exhaustion after a night of work. Thunder of boots on cobblestones, Soldiers in full armor, far more than necessary for arresting a family of beggars. Children screams as they're dragged from their mother's arms. Anna fights them. The historical records note she had to be subdued, that she cursed and spat and clawed like a wild animal. But what mother wouldn't, seeing armed men seizing her children? Little Michelle, only 10 years old, clings to her skirts until a soldier pries him away. Gumpre tries to run but is caught within steps. Simon, the eldest, stands frozen. Perhaps understanding better than the others that resistance is futile. The neighbors watch from windows and doorways. Some cross themselves. Others turn away. But nobody intervenes. Who would dare? And more to the point, who would risk themselves for the Pappenheimers? The family is separated immediately. This is standard procedure. But it serves a darker purpose. Alone, terrified, each family member will be more vulnerable to what comes next. Paulus is thrown into the men's prison. Anna into a cell barely large enough to lie down in. The children, and this detail should chill your blood, are housed with hardened criminals who are encouraged to terrify them with tales of what happens to which spawn. Meanwhile, Maximilian is already planning the show trial. This won't be some quiet affair in a local court. This will be spectacle, a demonstration of divine justice that will echo across Europe. He personally orders that the best interrogators be brought in, that no expense be spared in extracting confessions. The guilt of the accused is never in question. The only question is how to make their guilt serve the greatest political purpose. Here's the cold calculation that seals the family's fate. Maximilian needs them to be guilty of more than just murder. Simple killers won't serve his purposes. He needs devil worshippers, a vast conspiracy, proof that Satan himself is moving against Bavaria, and that only the Duke's iron fist can protect the faithful. The Pappenheimers will be the stars of this morality play, whether they know their lines or not. Letters fly between palace and prison. Maximilian wants updates. He wants confessions. He wants names of accomplices. Most of all, he wants a show that will demonstrate his power and piety to rivals and subjects alike. The Pappenheimers ceased to be human beings the moment that thief spoke their name. Now they're not even criminals in any real sense. They're props in political theater, and their bodies are about to become the canvas on which Maximilian will write his message of authority and religious devotion. In the stone silence of the torture chamber, truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is making the pain stop. They bring each family member one by one into a chamber beneath Munich prison. The walls are lined with devices designed by twisted minds for the sole purpose of creating unbearable agony. The rack, the thumb screws, the boots that crush legs, the pincers that glow red from the brazier, they start with Paulus. The logic is cold. Break the father and the family will follow. They strip him naked, shave his body, standard procedure, to search for devil's marks. Then they begin. First come the thumb screws, tightened slowly until bones begin to crack. When he insists on his innocence, they move to the boots, wooden devices that compress the legs until circulation stops and tissue begins to die. Paulus holds out for hours, maybe even days. He maintains the truth. They're just a poor family. They've harmed no one. They know nothing of magic or devils or murdered children. The interrogators, frustrated, decide to escalate. They bring in Anna. Imagine Paulus, broken and bleeding, watching as they prepare to torture his wife. The interrogators know exactly what they're doing. Physical pain has limits, but watching someone you love suffer, that breaks people in ways no instrument can match. They position Anna where Paulus can see her face, can hear every sound she makes. The historical records are deliberately vague about what exactly is done to Anna, but we know it's methodical, escalating, designed to break not just her body, but her will. And more importantly, it's designed to break Paulus by proxy. Each scream from Anna is worse than any torture they could inflict on him directly. This is where the confession begins to take shape, not as truth, but as the only currency that might buy mercy. Paulus begins to talk. Yes, they've killed. Yes, they've made candles from infant fat. The interrogators, finally getting what they want, press for details. How many? Where? When? How? The numbers that emerge are staggering. 400 children. The absurdity of the number should be proof of the confession's falseness. When would a family struggling to survive have time to murder 400 children? How would such a massive crime spree go unnoticed? But logic has no place in that stone chamber. The interrogators coach them, shape their confessions into a narrative that fits political needs. They need specific details about satanic rituals, so the Pappenheimers provide them. They need a conspiracy that justifies widespread fear, so the Pappenheimers invent one. Each session adds new layers to the fiction, new horrors that the family remembers when pain becomes unbearable. Anna's confession is particularly detailed. Under torture, she admits to flying through the night on a demonic fork, to grinding up bones of infants for magical powders, to sexual congress with demons. The confession is so elaborate, so full of impossible details, that it reads today like the fever dream of a mind destroyed by pain. The children are not spared. Even little Michelle, just 10 years old, is subjected to what they call mild torture. The records mercifully don't specify what that means for a child, but we know he too confesses, admitting to helping his parents, to participating in their supposed crimes. The sight of their parents broken and bleeding, the threats of what will happen to them, the isolation and terror, it all combines to make even the children complicit in writing this fiction of horror. But the interrogators aren't satisfied with confessions from just 5 people. A conspiracy this size demands more victims. And the Pappenheimers are about to be forced into the ultimate corruption, destroying others just to earn a single moment of peace from their own agony. The interrogators return to that stone chamber with a new demand: names. Paulus lies on the floor of his cell, his legs useless from the boots, his hands mangled from the screws. The interrogator enters with a pitcher of water. Just water, but to a man who hasn't drunk in days, it might as well be gold. The interrogator makes the bargain explicit. 1 name, 1 sip. A name of an accomplice in their supposed crimes. And Paulus can wet his cracked lips. Think about that moment. The absolute degradation of being reduced to trading human lives for water. Paulus knows these people are innocent. He knows because he's innocent. Because the entire confession is a fabrication born of agony. But his body screams for relief, and his mind has been shattered by weeks of torture. The first name comes out as barely a whisper. A neighbor who'd once shown them kindness. The interrogator smiles, allows a small sip, then demands another name, and another. Each name buys a moment's relief water, a loosening of bonds, a brief respite from active torture. But each name also adds another link to the chain of destruction. Anna faces the same devil's bargain. They tell her Paulus has already named dozens of accomplices. Why protect people who are already doomed? Why suffer for those who will soon suffer anyway? And doesn't she want to see her children again? Doesn't she want their suffering to end? All she has to do is confirm the names Paulus gave and add some of her own. The children are manipulated differently. They're told their parents have confessed everything, that holding back names will only anger God further. Little Michelle, confused and terrified, begins naming everyone he can think of. The baker who'd once given them stale bread, the tavern keeper who'd let them shelter from rain, even other beggar children they'd encountered on the roads. The interrogators carefully record every name, cross-referencing, looking for patterns, building their case for a massive satanic conspiracy in the heart of Bavaria. When the Pappenheimers run out of names they actually know, the interrogators suggest some. What about the miller's wife? Didn't you say you saw her at a gathering? And the tortured family, desperate for any approval, any mercy, agrees. Yes, The miller's wife. Of course. By the time the naming ends, over 400 people have been implicated. 400 souls marked for investigation, interrogation, possibly torture, and death. All because a desperate family was forced to trade names for water, for a moment without pain, for the false promise that cooperation might save them. The virus of accusation spreads outward from that torture chamber, like ripples in a poisoned pond. Some of the named flee immediately, their flight taken as proof of guilt. Others are arrested, and under torture, they too begin naming names. The fiction the Pappenheimers were forced to create takes on a life of its own, growing and mutating with each new victim. But here's the most heartbreaking part. The Pappenheimers know what they've done. In their few moments of lucidity between torture sessions, they must be haunted by the faces of those they condemned. They've been transformed from victims into vectors of destruction, their pain weaponized against innocence, just like themselves. The interrogators have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They've taken one family's agony and transformed it into a tool of mass persecution. The machine of persecution is fully operational now, grinding through lives with bureaucratic efficiency. And at its heart are the Pappenheimers, broken, emptied, having served their purpose as the seeds of manufactured panic. The trial is a success. Now all that's left is the public spectacle of their complete and total annihilation. July 29th, 1600. Dawn breaks over Munich with the sound of drums and church bells. This is not a simple execution. Duke Maximilian has ordered a spectacle that will be remembered for generations. Workers have spent days preparing the route from prison to execution grounds, setting up barriers to control the massive crowd expected to attend. The Pappenheimer family is awakened before dawn, washed, dressed in the white shirts of the condemned. But first, there's one more act of cruelty. The authorities bring them together one last time. Paulus, Anna, their adult son Simon, and the younger boys Gumpre and Michel. They're allowed to see each other, to say goodbye, knowing that within hours they'll die in front of tens of thousands. The procession begins at 6 in the morning. Paulus is placed in a cart, his broken legs unable to support him. But this isn't mercy, it's practicality. They need him conscious and aware for what's to come. Anna and Simon walk, chains clanking with each step. The younger boys are carried by guards, their small bodies overwhelmed by the situation. Along the 2-mile route, the executioner's assistants have set up stations. At each one, a new torture is inflicted on Paulus as the crowd watches. First come the pincers, heated until they glow red, tearing chunks of flesh from his arms and chest. The smell of burning meat fills the air. Paulus screams, but the procession never stops. This is theater, and the show must go on. At the second station, they tear at his legs with the pincers. At the third, his back. Each wound is calculated to cause maximum pain without killing him. The executioner is a professional. He knows exactly how much the human body can endure. Between stations, priests walk alongside the cart, urging Paulus to repent, to embrace God before his death. The irony is lost on no one. They're torturing him in the name of the same God they demand he embrace. The crowd's reaction is mixed. Some cheer each new torture, caught up in bloodlust. Others watch in horrified silence, perhaps recognizing this could be them, their families, if they ever fall afoul of authorities. Children are held up on shoulders to see better, to learn what happens to those who consort with the devil. Anna is forced to watch it all. This, too, is calculated. Her torture is psychological. Seeing her husband systematically destroyed while knowing her own fate will be no better. Simon stands beside her and records note he tries to comfort his mother even as he faces his own death. The younger boys are kept slightly apart, but close enough to hear everything, to understand what's happening to their father. When they finally reach the execution ground, Paulus is more dead than alive. But the performance isn't over. He's tied to a wheel, his broken body displayed for all to see. In a normal execution by breaking wheel, the condemned would receive a mercy blow to end their suffering quickly. But Paulus is denied even this small grace. He's left to die slowly, each breath a struggle, each moment agony. The symbolism is clear. This man is so evil, so far beyond redemption, that he deserves no mercy. As Paulus lingers on the wheel, gasping and moaning, the executioner prepares for the next act. Anna is brought forward, her eyes locked on her dying husband. The stakes are ready, the fires are lit, but first there will be one more performance, one more calculated cruelty designed to burn itself into the memory of every witness. And what happens next will ensure the name Pappenheimer echoes through history as a synonym for judicial murder. We return now to where we began. Anna Pappenheimer bound to the stake, the executioner's blade catching morning sun, her husband's broken body still visible on the wheel, a grotesque monument to the Duke's justice. Her sons watching with eyes that will never recover from this sight. The executioner doesn't immediately light the pyre. First comes the final degradation, as the crowd presses forward, as her young sons, Michel and Gumpre, are held fast by guards. The executioner tears open Anna's shirt. What happens next is an assault on motherhood itself, the symbolic destruction of the body that nursed these children, that was their first comfort in a cruel world. Her breasts are cut away. The smell of blood mingles with smoke from waiting fires. And then, in an act of cruelty so extreme it silences even this bloodthirsty crowd, the mutilated flesh is forced against her sons' mouths in a mockery of maternal nurturing. The crowd falls silent. Even in an age of public executions, this is shocking. This isn't just killing, it's the deliberate annihilation of the sacred bond between mother and child. Michel, only 10 years old, will carry this image for the brief remainder of his life. Gumpre's face, according to witnesses, goes blank, as if his mind simply refuses to process what's happening. Only then do they light the fires. Anna Pappenheimer dies not just as a condemned witch, but as a mother whose final moments were engineered to cause maximum trauma to her children. The flames rise, the crowd begins to disperse, but the show isn't over. Simon, the eldest son, is beheaded a relatively merciful death compared to his parents, but mercy is relative in this orchestrated nightmare. He dies knowing his parents were tortured to death, knowing his young brothers will follow, knowing their family name will forever be synonymous with evil. The authorities save a special fate for Michel. At 10 years old, he's too young to execute immediately. Even Duke Maximilian's justice has some limits. Instead, they subject him to something arguably worse. He's forced to watch every moment of his family's destruction, guards ensuring he doesn't look away, officials carefully recording his reactions for posterity. After the executions, Michel is placed in the custody of Jesuits, who will attempt to save his soul. He's rebaptized, given a new name, told daily that his parents were monsters who deserved their fate. For 3 months, this child lives in a purgatory of religious indoctrination and trauma, but the authorities always intended to complete their destruction of the Pappenheimer line. On November 26, 1600, Michel is strangled and burned. A 10-year-old boy murdered by the state for the crime of being born to the wrong family. Gumpre meets the same fate, though records are less clear about exactly when. The Pappenheimer case sends ripples of fear throughout Bavaria. The 400 names extracted under torture lead to dozens more arrests, more torture, more executions. Entire families flee rather than risk accusation. The social fabric of communities tears as neighbors wonder who might name them under torture. Duke Maximilian gets what he wants. He's celebrated as a defender of the faith, a ruler strong enough to root out evil. The Pappenheimer executions become legendary, cited as proof of the danger of witchcraft and the need for harsh measures. But here's what we must remember. The Pappenheimers were innocent. They were a poor family, guilty of nothing more than existing on the margins of society. Their true crime was being powerless when power needed victims. And here's why this matters today. Why you need to pay attention to this story even though it happened over 400 years ago. The mechanism that destroyed the Pappenheimers is still operating. It's the same machinery that creates scapegoats, that manufactures enemies, that transforms ordinary people into monsters so they can be destroyed for political purposes. Look around. How many groups today are being painted as threats to society? How many people are being accused of impossible crimes? How many show trials are being conducted where the verdict is decided before evidence is presented? The Pappenheimers were waste handlers, the lowest of the low, perfect victims because nobody would defend them. Today, we just use different words for the same targeting of the powerless. So here's my challenge to you, and it's not abstract. When you see someone being scapegoated, someone being accused of monstrous crimes that serve political purposes more than justice, speak up. When you witness manufactured panics that demand we unite against some convenient enemy, ask who benefits from the fear. When you see show trials where confessions are coerced and guilt is predetermined, recognize the pattern. Subscribe to Medieval Spirits and share this video so others understand how the machinery of persecution operates. Leave a comment telling me what modern scapegoating you're seeing that echoes the Pappenheimer case. Because the name Pappenheimer should live on not as a warning about witches, but as a warning about us. About how easily civilization transforms into barbarity when we allow power to manufacture enemies. About how quickly justice without mercy becomes mere cruelty. About how the most dangerous magic is the spell that makes us see devils where there are only desperate human beings. Anna Pappenheimer died with her sons forced to watch, her body mutilated as political theater. Michel died 3 months later after being told his parents were monsters. 400 innocent people were named and persecuted because one family was tortured into creating a fiction of conspiracy. Will you be someone who recognizes when this machinery starts operating again? Or will you be part of the crowd that watches and does nothing? The choice is yours. But remember, in every age, someone decides who the Pappenheimers will be, and nobody ever thinks it could be them.